welcome back. I hope everybody had a few minutes to relax and enjoy lunch. And you're back to help us spend the next couple of hours in hearing more about this work and in the opportunity to do some deeper dives into the presentation areas that you heard about this morning. I think everybody has heard about the tremendous investment that Cambia Health Solutions has made to bringing the Blue Zones project here to Oregon. And it's my pleasure to introduce Peggy McGuire again, this time in her role as the president of the Cambia Health Solutions Foundation, to talk about how this work and this asset can be made available to you and your communities going forward. So would you please join me in again welcoming Peggy McGuire.
Thank you, Mike. Collective impact you heard about this morning, it really drives community transformation, helping us go from good to great. We've learned through our experience and history that change starts with people working together, determining what is needed, and developing innovative solutions as a community. Working with the Blue Zones team has helped us jumpstart community transformation efforts in Oregon using proven tools and resources. This nationally recognized program helps communities create better health on every level, building on learnings from healthy examples around the world. Simply put, Blue Zones is one of the ways we are transforming our communities in Oregon to become the healthiest state. The Cambia Health Foundation was proud to launch this effort with a $3.5 million donation and a challenge grant. This money went to our collective community transformation work, to developing shared measures and getting the initiatives off the ground. It also provided the funding for the backbone staff that are propelling Oregon's healthiest state forward. And although we've had some fits and starts, I would say, over the past year, we've learned together and we've grown together. Working alongside the Blue Zones team, we've been inspired by their proven framework and their model for healthy communities. More importantly, though, we've been impressed by the team's dedication to really getting to know the community and their passion for understanding what's needed in community. I witnessed this firsthand in Klamath Falls, which we call our first Blue Zones demonstration community. And I know this quote is overshared. I always hear it, but it really reminds me of what's going on in Klamath Falls. This is the Margaret Mead quote. "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And so I just like to take this moment to call out a few of those committed citizens in Klamath Falls, starting with Catherine Pope and Stephanie Van Dyke, they were key local leaders who learned about this program and thought, we want to bring this to our community. They, I think, took the idea to Paul Stewart, the CEO of Sky Lakes Medical Center, who stepped in with financial backing and instrumental leadership as chair of the local steering committee. And then Paul was wise to bring with him another very talented local leader, Kelly Minty Morris, county commissioner, who now serves as co-chair of the steering committee. And it's these amazing leaders and committed citizens who are changing the face of Klamath Falls. They've hit the ground running, and they're already making significant gains. I said to Klamath Falls, and I continue to believe, that we will look to them as a shining example of what is possible when we launch the second Blue Zone community in Oregon. We'll be selecting that second community in January. I'm also really excited to announce that all of the Blue Zones project tools and resources are available statewide. They've been really great with us in terms of modifying their programs so that we can, even if it's not a demonstration community, we can make the tools and resources available in every community where change is desired. Their executive director for the statewide initiatives has been hired, Aaron Patnode, and he and his team are working to implement and deploy the statewide resources throughout the entire state. And now I'd invite you to watch this video, which demonstrates our shared commitment to make Oregon the healthiest state in the nation as we increase our quality of life, health, and wellness.
A healthier Oregon would be
fresh air
and exercise.
It's the different grocery stores that have healthy food choices. It's being outside and being active.
What defines a healthy community is multidimensional. Certainly, you jump to it as, are people healthy? Are they, do they tend to live in a more healthy way than a way that leads to ill health? But it goes to primarily the social and cultural norms within the community.
It's very important for the future of our careers, the future of our communities, and the future of our children.
Cambia got involved because there is a tremendous opportunity here in this state to really transform the health profile of the people who live here. And again, so many organizations are already doing some very valuable things, but the rest of the community doesn't know about it yet.
80% of chronic disease, cancer, dementia, heart disease, and diabetes is avoidable.
This isn't happening.
Nobody here tried to live to 100. They didn't go on the centenarian diet. They didn't try to exercise their way to health. It happened. It's a result of their environment. People are living 8 to 10 years longer without dementia. They do so without depression, without heart disease and cancer, big killers in America. They don't have any special genes. There's some combination between the way they live and their environment that is yielding extraordinary longevity.
He's already implemented these ideas in many other cities.
And after 2 or 3 years, we see obesity dropping by double digits. We see smoking rates drop by as much as 30%. And what these people are doing better than us is they're avoiding the diseases that foreshorten our lives.
The ideal healthy community to me is vibrant in every way. Our physical well-being is being taken care of, our mental well-being, our connections to each other, our ability to work and play in our environment, our ability to be productive and move society together, all of these things combine to make a healthy community.
We've been selected to be the pilot county for the Blue Zones project for the state of Oregon. And the core part of our mission, obviously, is to provide the services that take care of sick people, but we also want to invest in making our community a nicer place for all of us to live. And a place that encourages healthy lifestyles, that makes it easier to make a choice to be active, and also enhances the beauty of our community, makes it attractive to people to want to move here and live here and to build their business here and raise their family here.
Once people start seeing some positive change, their culture shifts. They start self-identifying. We are a blue zone. We are a place where our kids are growing up healthy. And once you've given them that new lens to look at decisions that are made down the road, you start creating this self-perpetuating, this self-fulfilling prophecy of well-being. And there's where the big difference comes in.
Yeah, woo! I love that video because it really shows us, coming from a place of love for our state and our community, that working together, we can all make change happen, and it's within our reach. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dan Buettner, who will share the story of a Finnish town that went on a diet. If you were here last year, you heard Dan talk about his travels to Sardinia, to Okinawa, to Loma Linda, and some of the places you saw in the video, where people are living vibrant, active lives well into their hundreds. Dan called these areas blue zones, which were the inspiration for his book and sparked the Blue Zones Project. In the story today, Dan will share insights and some amazing results from how a community changed its environment in all sectors so that healthy choices were easier. I first had the opportunity to hear Dan speak a couple of years ago at a Western conference in Vancouver, BC, and I was with our president, who you saw in the film, Mark Gans, and Dan was speaking about the blue zones around the world and the success that had been experienced in Iowa and some of the communities in the US where the Blue Zones Project started. He not only ignited our imagination about bringing this to Oregon, but we immediately felt a kindred spirit with him, and we knew that his heart was in the right place. Dan is driven by the same deep-seated passion that we are toward transformation and better health for all. And like my boss, he truly believes that we can change the world. We are happy to have, and just so honored to have, Dan Buettner, New York Times best-selling author and creator of the Blue Zones Project, here with us today. He personally inspires me to work together, and working together, I know that we can increase the health and well-being of all Oregonians. So please help me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Dan Buettner, to the stage. Hey. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for that generous introduction. It's a delight to be here in Oregon, the land of salmon, fine Pinot Noir, and some of arguably the most beautiful moss in the world. I'm going to talk about this North Karelia. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the world's longest lived cultures and the lessons they have to teach us, and especially focused on food lessons and how that will show up in Oregon here. But my partners, Healthway and I, are big believers that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So we're going to start with you, and we're going to start by your annual longevity checkup. The Healthiest State Initiative has been working for a year now, so you should see yourselves getting biologically younger and living longer, and we're going to see how much longer you're going to live. I'm going to ask you 8 questions. These 8 questions drive about 50% of the healthy life years that Americans experience. And with those, I'll be able to figure out how long you're going to live. Your job is to raise your hand when the question pertains to you. And then the hard part is remember how many times you raise your hand. So ready. Some of you heard these last year, but it's checkup. Raise your hand if you sleep at least 7.5 hours a night, at least 5 nights a week. 7.5 hours. Most of you well rested here in the Pacific Northwest. Raise your hand if you walk at least 45 minutes a day, walk or bike. And I specifically say walk or bike because it's predictive of how much you're out of your car and on your feet. Okay, more than half of you. Oh, raise your hand if you get at least 3 honest servings of vegetables every day. And French fries and ketchup do not count. 3. Raise your hand if you have not, and I underscore not, had unprotected sex with a stranger. I said not. There they go. I was in New York City a few weeks ago, and I asked that same question to a whole room full of people. And after a long silence, some guy finally breaks the silence by saying, "Do you mean this week?" Raise your hand if you have at least 3 good friends you can count on a bad day. 3 good friends you can count on a bad day. Okay, almost all of you. Raise your hand if you belong to a faith-based community. Faith-based community. Keep your hands up, and keep them up if you show up at least 4 times a month. Okay, there's still 2 hands. Easy question. Raise your hand if you've not smoked in the last 5 years. Not smoked in the last, there we go. Almost everybody. And finally, raise your hand if you have the desire and you believe you have the health to reach age 90. Health and desire to reach age 90. Okay, most of you. That's actually the biggest predictor of how long you're going to live. So if you raise your hand twice and you're a man, life expectancy is 68, and if you're a woman, it's 72. If you raise your hand at least 5 times and you're a man, life expectancy is 77. If you're a woman, it's 81. And if you raise your hand at least 7 times and you're a man, life expectancy is 88. And if you're a woman, it's 92. Did anybody raise their hand all 8 times? Anybody raise their hand all 8 times? There we go, 1. Could you guys please stand up? Come on, own it. Could we give them a huge Oregon Healthiest State round of applause? God, I actually think that's a record. You go to Middle America and you ask people to stand up. Nobody stands up. So, I'm going to do a quick recap. I think most of you were here last year for this event, but 30 or 40% of you weren't. So I'm going to just spend 5 minutes and quickly recap the idea behind Blue Zones. The idea was really to, in a sense, reverse engineer longevity. Only about 20% of how long you live is dictated by your genes. The other 80% is your lifestyle and environment. So on assignment from National Geographic and with a grant from the National Institutes on Aging, we spent 3 years to find demographically confirmed areas where people live measurably longest. They have what we want. They live a long time. They largely avoid the chronic diseases that foreshorten our lives: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, many forms of dementia, and they tend to die quickly. We then put together a team to go to these places, develop a methodology which would enable us to tease out the common denominators. No matter if you went to Asia or Europe or Latin America, we saw the same 9 things happening over and over again. And I'm going to tell you what those 9 things are. But first, I'll take you quick to the 5 blue zones. First one, off the coast of Italy, the island of Sardinia, a population of shepherds that get regular low-intensity physical activity. They eat mostly a plant-based diet, and they have a culture that actually celebrates age. The older you get, the more celebrated you are, and older people are actually harnessed. Their wisdom is harnessed and put to work. On the other side of the planet, the world's longest-lived women, Okinawa, about 30 times more female centenarians there. They're the cornerstone of their diet for the last 60 years, or most of the last 100 years, I should say, has been sweet potatoes. They have a strong sense of purpose embodied in the word ikigai, and they have very strong social networks, committed social networks of 4 or 5 people called moais, and they travel through life with this group of people. Nobody's ever really lonely. Here in America, we found the Blue Zone 80 miles east of Los Angeles, down the San Bernardino Freeway, among the Seventh-day Adventists. Adventists are conservative Methodists who distinguish themselves from other Christians in that, A, they evangelize with health, but B, they take the Sabbath very seriously from Friday night until Saturday night. They also take their diet directly from the Bible. Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. Their diet is mainly every plant that bears seeds, every tree that bears fruit, and then green plants. So they're mostly vegetarian or vegan, and they live significantly longer than the average American. Life expectancy in America right now for women is about 80, but Adventist women are living 9 years longer, and men, the difference is even more remarkable. So you have this entire population of Americans that live off the San Bernardino Freeway that, in my mind anyway, supremely underscores the promise that if you shape your environment the right way, these people have no genetic advantage, you can live much longer, and again, with the fraction of the rate of chronic diseases. I like to tell the story of Ellsworth Wareham, a multimillionaire, 95 years old, yet when a contractor wanted $6,000 for him to build a privacy fence around his backyard, he's like, well, for that kind of money, I'll do it myself. And for the next 3 days, he was out shoveling cement and hauling timbers. And on the fourth day, perhaps predictably, he was in the operating room. But this isn't Ellsworth getting open heart surgery. This is Ellsworth doing open heart surgery. Until 97, doing 20 open heart surgeries every single month. He told me this great story. He Adventist, so he's a vegan, but he wasn't always a vegan. In fact, he grew up actually in Oregon on a farm, a dairy farm, and he was one of the first surgeons in America to do open heart surgery. And he remembers one day reaching in and feeling a leg artery, and which is supposed to be supple and soft. You're supposed to be able to squeeze it between your fingers, and it kind of gives. He remembers feeling that artery of a heavy meat eater who's getting open heart surgery, and actually feeling that artery crunch under his fingers, so full of plaque. The guy was 47 years old. And it was that tactile experience that made him go home and become vegan. He's been vegan ever since. And he's continues to, well, he did surgery till he was 97, and then he slowed down a little bit, but still an active guy. On the other side of the, back to the other side of the Atlantic, the island of Ikaria, Greece. This is a population where people live about 8 years longer than the rest of us, with a fraction, about half the rate of cardiovascular disease and about 1/5 the rate of dementia that we suffer from. In America here, if you hit age 85, there's about a 50% chance you're suffering from dementia. Here, it's about a 10% chance. So when you look at the common denominators of all these cultures, you see the same 9 things happening over and over again. They don't really exercise, at least not in the way we think of exercise. As you heard in that video, none of these people ever tried to live a long time. They didn't say at age 30 or 40, well, I'm going to get on that longevity diet, or I'm going to get a treadmill and get in shape. In every case, longevity ensued. It was not something that they pursued. And that's a big difference in the way we tend to look at health in this country. We often look at getting healthier as something that we have to schedule for or make a big effort to do. These people didn't do it. They lived in environments where every time the kids went to school, or they went to work, or to a friend's house, or out to eat, an occasion to walk, their houses were deconvenienced. They suffered from the same stresses that we do, but they had sacred daily rituals to relieve stress, like prayer, taking a nap, doing happy hour, or ancestor veneration. They had actually vocabulary for purpose. You don't hear purpose much in the context of health, but if you can clearly identify your life meaning, it's worth about 8 years over being rudderless in life. In blue zones, people all have vocabulary for health. They drink a little bit. They eat mostly a plant-based diet. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the diet in a minute. But more important than thinking about what to eat, they think about what to take out of their diet. They're proactive about not overeating. In Okinawa, a 2,500-year-old adage, hara hachibu, reminds them to stop eating when their stomachs are 80% full. They eat a huge breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper. And then the foundation of all this, and probably 50% of the longevity formula, they put their families first, keep their aging parents nearby. They tend to belong to a faith-based community, and they really pay attention to who they're hanging out with. We now know that if your 3 best friends are obese and unhealthy, there's a 150% better chance that you'll be overweight yourself. So the average maximum life expectancy of our species, everybody living in your communities and living in Oregon, is about 92. If we got rid of all the avoidable diseases, the average person living here could hit 92. We don't know how to get beyond that because the fundamental mechanisms of aging kick in, and we haven't figured out how to get over that hurdle yet. But nevertheless, life expectancy in this country is only 80. So somewhere along the way, we're leaving a dozen good years on the table. And why is that happening? Well, it might be because our diet has something to do with it. The average American eats about 200 pounds of meat a year, 607 pounds of dairy products, 91 pounds of sugar, that'd be a mound about this high, 46 slices of pizza, 66 pounds of chips. We spend more in this country on eating chips than we do on cancer research, and 58 gallons of soda pop every single year. And you got to think that's driving some of the problem. So a few years ago, I got to thinking, well, if Americans getting unhealthy because of their diet, what should they change? And I did some research, and I found there's about 500 diets that's coming into existence in the last 15 years. I just Googled it. And you start drilling down on these diets, and you find out pretty quickly they contradict each other. They're hopelessly confusing. What are you supposed to eat? Are you supposed to be eating Atkins or South Beach or Paleo or Dean Ornish or the DASH diet or the USDA? Well, instead of trying to pick my way through that, I proposed another book to National Geographic, which essentially would take a very careful look at the Blue Zones diet. The first book I wrote, Blue Zones, was more about a general idea of what they did. But this time I hired 3 graduate students from the University of Minnesota, and we gathered 155 dietary studies done in all 5 Blue Zones for the last 100 years. Because if you want to know what to eat to live to 100, you have to know what these people ate when they were 10 and 30 and 40 and 70 and 80 and 100. You can't just ask them what they ate last week. So we took these 150 or so studies and we did what's known as a meta-analysis to get a worldwide average. And we found out that for the most part, there's a little bit of an outlier here among the Costa Ricans, Nicoya, but for the most part, their dietary patterns are pretty similar. And when you distill that all down, you see that actually about 95% of what they're eating every day, 90% of their caloric intake is plants. There are some places like Okinawa before 1970 or so where they were almost a complete vegan diet, 100%, and the Adventist, almost complete vegan. But then there are places like Nicoya where maybe it was 15 to 20%. But on average, about 95% of their caloric intake was plants. Shockingly, I found 65% from starches. They were eating complex carbohydrates, whole grains, rice, sweet potatoes was the dietary staple in Okinawa. Greens we found were associated, if you're eating about a half a cup of greens a day, that was associated with an extra 4 years of life expectancy. In every diet of longevity in the world, the cornerstone of what they ate was beans. About a cup of beans a day, which if you're eating a cup of beans a day, it's probably adding somewhere between 3 and 4 years to your life expectancy because beans are not only good for your gut, high in protein, so it's cheap protein. People will worry about protein. No cheaper way to get it than to eat beans. But also, it's probably forcing out less healthy forms of protein. They did eat meat. It's mostly a celebratory food, about 5 times per month. A little bit of fish. No cow's dairy. None of the Blue Zones at all were they consuming milk or mozzarella or cheddar. They snacked on nuts. They drank water, tea, coffee, and a little bit of wine. But also, none of them were ever on a diet. When it came time to celebrate, they pigged out. They slaughtered a pig and drank wine all night and ate goat's liver. So it wasn't really a diet. It was more of the default foods that they ate. When you think of it, we all eat about 1,100 meals a year, 365 times 3. 100 of those meals were celebratory meals, but the default meals, the meals you get to eat in the morning to get started for the day or lunch, those tended to be these largely plant-based diets, or largely plant-based food. So let's just say I could convince you that this Blue Zone diet was right for you, that you sort of signed on, you said to yourself, well, I'm going to get on that longevity diet now and try to stick with it for long enough to avoid a heart attack or cancer. The problem is diets don't work very well for human beings. You get 100 people on today, you'll lose about 10 of them within 3 months. You'll lose about 90% of them within 7 months, and you'll lose almost all of them in 3 years. Our brains are hardwired for novelty. We like new things. We run out of gas. We lose our disciplines. No diet in the history of the world has ever worked for more than about 3% of the people who start it for after 2 years. They're good short-term strategies. They sell a lot of books. They'll sell Weight Watchers programs, but they really don't work. Exercise programs have a similar recidivism curve, and so do people who try to take supplements to get healthy. Even if you had a pill that would make you healthier, which we probably don't, at least proactively, Americans wouldn't take it long enough to make a difference. So if that doesn't work, what does? Well, now we come to an area in Finland called North Karelia. It's an area right on the Russian border, about 145,000 people, mostly dairy farmers. And in 1972, they had the highest rate of cardiovascular disease in the world. Rich white guys dropping dead of heart attacks at age 55. So on assignment for National Geographic, I got another grant. I went there to study them because something fairly extraordinary happened there. So I went first looking for the sort of origins of these heart attacks. And not only were they dairy farmers, but they loved their meat. They fried their cheese and butter. The national dish was something called North Karelian stew. And it was made of 3 ingredients: water, fatty pork, and salt. And if you wanted it spicy, you added more salt. And they'd wash that down with milk. So not coincidentally, people were getting sick. At about that same time, an epidemiologist named Ansel Keys from the University of Minnesota had launched this 7-country study where he followed men all the way from Finland down through Yugoslavia, France, Italy, into Greece. And he followed them every year for 5 years. Every 5 years for about 50 years to date, actually, and took note of their diet and when they died. And he noticed that the farther north people were in Europe, the quicker they were dying. People were eating a Mediterranean diet, were living much longer. And North Karelia was the worst. Well, the Finns read this report, and the local officials got rather upset about this. And they were being studied, but nobody was coming to their aid. They were just international scientists were coming, watching them die soon and trying to figure out why. And the Minister of Health actually tapped a 27-year-old med student epidemiologist named Pekka Puska. This is him here. Basically, he went on to run the World Health Organization's Department of Non-Infectious Disease. But at the time, he was kind of a wide-eyed 27-year-old. And he comes to North Karelia using the same tools that public officials use everywhere. Public health officials traditionally were trained to get rid of infectious disease, to attack infectious disease. And the best way to do that is to find the people most likely to get the disease and then target the intervention at that, whether it's kids with polio or kids that might develop polio, or whether it's people who might develop Ebola or tuberculosis. You go to the people most likely to get sick. So public health at the time was starting to grapple with this idea of heart disease by trying to identify people who had high cholesterol and then pointing the intervention at that. And he comes into North Karelia where people were dropping dead at 55, and he quickly realized there's no way we can take everybody's serum cholesterol and then try to get them all on heart medicine and target the problem. So he took a different approach. He put together a team of 7 people, and they focused on making the environment healthier. This is actually where Blue Zones got the idea. He hired a young project head who's realized early on that the secret is going to be interacting with people on a daily basis. Get out and meet people, form partnerships. He created these ambassadorships where he evangelized this idea of making a healthier environment. He actually recruited 500 ambassadors. Their only job was to kind of spread the word. This was before the days of Facebook and Twitter. And then they went really looking at the big problems. So a big part of the problem was the dairy that Finns drank had about double the normal amount of butterfat in it, 13% or so. And they decided, and they could see very clearly that this butterfat was connecting to the high rates of cardiovascular disease. So Pekka Puska went after the dairy industry, and the dairy industry went berserk. They started planting these articles in the press trying to discredit the project. And what happened, though, was people started reading these articles and saying, oh, really? We didn't even know that drinking too much milk is not all that good for us. He knew he had to get more berries into, or more fruit into the Finnish diet. Oranges and grapes and apples had to come from Italy or Spain. It was very expensive, but it turns out that berries grew in great abundance, but only in August. And he organized, people created cooperatives to not only pick the berries, but also get those berries to market. Get them frozen, get them baked into products so that fruit was available to everybody all year round. If he didn't want people frying their food in butter, he had to provide another type of cooking oil. He worked with food scientists to create a canola oil that could be produced that far north. People there loved their sausage. And he wasn't about to talk people out of eating their sausage. But he did go to the sausage maker. This is actually him. And he convinced the sausage maker that a lot of people were getting on this bandwagon of eating healthier. And would he consider lowering the amount of fat and salt in his sausage over time and replacing it with what was actually a cheap mushroom filler? Mushrooms grew all over the place. They're now $30 a pound, but at the time they were cheap. And the sausage maker said fine, and he reformulated the sausage, and the consumption stayed exactly the same, but people did not even realize that they were consuming 30% less fat, 20% less salt. So he unleashed this silver buckshot of environmental changes over the course of about 10 years. And he was a scientist, and he was responsible for scientific rigor. In the British Journal of Medicine, he published the results a decade later. They saw the rate of cardiovascular disease going down by 80%. Middle-aged men, it went down 60% in women. But it was off the charts. It's never been replicated. No heart healthy vitality program in the world has ever replicated these results until, I think, today. We designed the Blue Zone program after North Karelia, inspired by the Power 9, but really designed to not try to change the behavior of individuals or guilt or incent or educate the individual. It just assumes that the average Oregonian lives most of its life or his or her life within 5 miles of his workplace or his home, or her workplace. And why not just change the environment? Well, what does that mean? Well, it turns out there's about 3 domains in our lives. There's our home environment. Turns out there's about a dozen things you can do to your home to nudge out excess eating and to engineer in more physical activity. We can all adjust our social networks to hang out with healthier people. And knowing our sense of purpose and putting that purpose to work by volunteering, that occasions dropping your chances of heart disease, your BMI, and even your healthcare costs. So our plan calls for us to, in each of the cities we work, to have one squad that endeavors to try to get 15% of the population to sign an individual pledge and think about improving their social network. And we help organize these MOIs. The second squad focuses on the places we spend our day. When you think of it, from the time you wake up in the morning to most of us the time we go to bed, we're in some building. We shop in stores, we go to work, we'll go out to eat often, our kids go to school. We all go to faith-based communities, and it turns out there's about 110 different nudges or defaults that you can set up, tweaking policy and design in places that will make the places we spend our day 20 to 25% healthier. And if you can make it comprehensive and ubiquitous and enough buildings in a city make those changes, you start getting a critical mass. And then finally, food policy. Do I live in a place where fruits and vegetables are cheapest and most accessible, or do I live in a place where chips, fries, and sodas are cheapest and most accessible? You may say to yourself, well, food policy is really interrupts individual responsibility, individual freedoms. But the reality is the obesity in our country right now drives about 90% of the diabetes, about 50% of heart disease, and about 30% of cancers. And whether or not you think it's a matter of individual responsibility or the realm of policy, every American spends about $1,700 every single year paying for somebody else's obesity. These aren't my figures, and that doesn't even begin to take into account higher healthcare costs. This is just tax dollars. Somebody's got to pay for less healthy people. Part of the reason is because the price of unhealthy foods has gone down and the price of healthy foods have gone up. And we tend to shape our behavior based on our pocketbook. I don't have to tell this audience that there are big health problems in our country. We spend about $2.1 trillion a year on largely avoidable diseases. 70% of us are overweight or obese, and for the first time in living history, life expectancy of our children is actually expected to be as much as 5 years less than our own life expectancy. That's not because we're stupid or we lack education or we don't try. We do try. And there's lots of phenomenal efforts taking place in this community to help people focus on their health. But the focus on our health, I argue, aims at the wrong target. Since 1970, the obesity rate has tripled. And that's because you cannot walk through an airport or go buy cough medicine without being routed through a gauntlet of salty snacks or sweetened sugared beverages. Every Oregonian, on average, lives next to 7 fast food restaurants within a half a mile of their home, on average. The cheapest, most convenient foods are the ones that are least healthy for us. It's a little bit like that old experiment when we were kids. If you threw a frog in boiling hot water, what does the frog do? It jumps out. But if you put the frog in lukewarm water and you raise the temperature 1 degree at a time, the frog gets complacent and you can eventually boil that frog. It's a little bit what has happened to us since 1970. There's no bad companies, there's no conspiracy. It's just little by little our environment has got less healthy. The secret to longevity, whether it's in our houses, in our workplaces, or in our communities, is to look at the populations that have achieved the health outcomes that we want, then unleashed evidence-based strategies that make the environments we live in healthier. It boils down to not only making the healthy choice the easy choice, but having the courage to make it the unavoidable choice. Thank you very much.